All right, thank you guys so much for being here, and I am going to turn it over to the rabbi. Is that working yet?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say a warm welcome to our congregation, B'nai Jeshurun. We're honored to host this evening. I'm Rolly Matalon. I'm a senior rabbi here at BJ. And with our democracy facing so many challenges these days, it is great to have all these people here, all these candidates here, and so many people and people online who are watching and participating tonight. I hope it's a robust conversation, interesting, intense, and I just wanted to say welcome, and this is Democracy in Action, and welcome to all the candidates as well. And I will turn it to the president of the Democratic Club.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Woo! Yes. Before we begin, I've been told that the most important information is to let you know where the bathrooms are. The bathrooms are between those two doors over there and all the way in the back by the exit sign over there. So, you know, we understand that that may be needed. I know I have it. There. All right, so welcome. We are so happy to have you at the Upper West Side Mayoral Candidate Forum of 2025. My name, thank you, yes. My name is Mary Pepito. I am president of Broadway Democrats. And it is my honor to help kick off this important event of community action and civic engagement. Joining us tonight, we have an audience of over 1,200 engaged participants, both in person and online. Woo! Tonight's event is hosted by 3 local Upper West Side Democratic clubs: Westside Democrats, woo! Broadway Democrats, and Columbia University College Democrats. And B'nai Jeshurun is graciously sponsoring us. Woo! Each of these Democratic clubs have a strong commitment to progressive ideals and community engagement that allows direct participation with the people who wish to represent us. So we are so happy to have you here and to host this event, and we are so happy that we have such great engaged participants and electorate. Before we get started, I'd like to give a warm welcome to the elected officials that have joined us here in the audience. First, we have our district leaders, and I would like to especially point out Paula Diamond-Roman, who's been amazing. Curtis Arluck, they're of the Broadway Democrats. John Wallmeyer, Patricia Still, Joan Palo, Pablo Zavallos, Janice Oppenheimer, Richard Oppenheimer, Joshua Kinberg, and Yvette Powell. Additionally, Gail Brewer and Linda Rosenthal. Linda Rosenthal represents this district. And so we are very happy to have them here with us tonight as well. And thank you for being here, and thank you for your continued service to our community. And now a little bit about our clubs, and I am going to turn it over to Columbia University Democrats.
Hi everyone, My name is Ananya Bhatia. I'm the media director for the Columbia University College Democrats. We are the largest and most active political campus club on Columbia's campus. We have everything from speaking events to weekly general body meetings to community service events. And for example, in the 2024 election, Columbia Democrats knocked on over 40,000 doors in Pennsylvania. We had dozens of members work on campaigns across the country. We called thousands of voters in swing districts. We are truly involved in the Manhattan community and more. So if you're interested in getting involved, please follow us at CUDems on Instagram. We have many Columbia and Barnard undergraduates in the audience tonight. So thank you guys for being here.
Good evening. My name is Carmen Romero-Lee, and I am the Vice President of Membership for the Westside Democrats. Our club president, Christine Anacino, was unable to make it tonight. For over 70 years, we have been a driving force in the 67th and 69th Assembly Districts, empowering our community through political action. In 2024, City and State New York recognized our impact by naming us #1 out of the 50 most powerful city political clubs, a testament to our members' hard work, dedication, and passion. The Westside Dems, renowned for launching the careers of exceptional public servants, boasts a strong membership and active engagement, ensuring a powerful voice within the New York County and state Democratic parties. And tomorrow, Thursday, January 30th, the Westside Dems will vote to endorse a mayoral candidate. To participate, you must be a dues-paying member for at least 60 days and attend the endorsement meeting via Zoom. Thank you.
And Broadway Democrats. Broadway Democrats is the official Democratic club of the top third of the 69th Assembly District, including Morningside Heights, down to 104th Street, Manhattan Valley, Southwest Harlem, and Manhattanville. We are a progressive club, a club that believes in creating opportunities for our members to directly engage, to make progress and support economic and social progress for all, and fight public corruption at all levels of government. Currently, we have an all-hands-on-deck moment. And yes, and I am encouraging each of you to please join one of our clubs so that we can strengthen our communities to fight against the disastrous policies of this new presidential administration. For Broadway Democrats to be eligible to vote, you must live in our district and be a registered voter there. Also, you must be a dues-paying member and have attended at least one meeting. We will take our endorsement vote on February 20th at the Forum. So now, we'd like to turn it over to the logistics.
So to ensure a fair and representative forum, candidates were invited based on the filing of at least with the New York City Campaign Finance Board, an important benchmark of campaign viability. 7 candidates are here tonight. Mayor Adams did not respond to our invitation and has not participated in any forums this election season. The 7 candidates have been seated tonight in a randomly selected order. They'll be asked questions selected by our 2 moderators. Each question posed tonight has been thoughtfully crowdsourced directly from our community, ensuring the discussion reflects the issues and priorities that matter most to you. Introduce our moderators.
I'd like to introduce our moderators for the evening. We have Politico journalist Jeff Coltin and Columbia professor Ester Fuchs. Ester is a professor of international and public affairs and political science and the director of the Urban and Social Policy Concentration at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Jeff Coltin is a reporter at Politico and co-author of the New York Playbook. He has covered New York City politics for over a decade. So not only are Ester and Jeff acclaimed professionals in their fields, but they both call this community home. Jeff lives on the Upper West Side with his fiance, and Esther lives in Morningside Heights where she raised her family. They bring New York City-focused policy expertise to this forum, and they have vested interest in the issues that matter most to us here in Manhattan. So now I will turn it over to them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. I'm going to say 2 words on behalf of myself and Jeff. Your presence tonight tells us just how high the stakes are in the next New York City mayoral race and how important the Democratic primary is. We are at an inflection point in America's democracy, and it is we, the people of New York City, of New York City's neighborhoods, and yes, the Upper West Side. We will have to protect our democracy. This will be a time when we will need effective and fair leadership from City Hall. We will have to protect our political values and make sure our government actually delivers the services we expect for every resident of our city without fear or favor. So tonight is the first round in what I know, what we know, will be an important conversation. Who do you think should be the next mayor of New York City?
Thank you very much. All right. I am going to note we're doing look, we've got 3 clubs that are organized this. We've got tons of engaged members, and we got literally 1,000 questions. So instead of, so thank you. We worked really hard to narrow these down, but instead of asking every candidate the same question and just going down the line, and you guys are all going to say the same thing, we're going to ask basically be on your toes. You're all going to be getting different questions. So be on your toes, be listening, be ready. We're mostly going to go in order, the usual waterfall. You guys get it. 1 minute. But we're going to start out with opening statements, where we'll start at the end with former Comptroller Scott Stringer. I believe you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and talk about, introduction.
Well, thank you very much, and it's... Okay. Hi, everybody. Tonight, you're reading about whether Trump may or may not pardon Eric Adams. And I don't care what happens with that, because it's time for this government to meet the voters. And we have to have a discussion about what our agenda is going to be. I love this city like all of you do. That's what brings us all together on a cold night. But our city government is not loving us back, and the stakes have never been higher. The lack of affordable housing being built, the mental health crisis in our subways, felony assaults are up. The kids are not doing well after COVID in the public schools. I know because I have 2 kids in the schools. We need a government that is going to finally build a place where we can do the big things. We should have Mitchell-Lama 2.0, just like in the urban renewal area in the 80s and 90s. It's time to do that, and I'm going to do that. We need to make sure that the people who are suffering, the homeless people on the streets, get the shelter they need, and they need to have the kind of services that they have earned. Think about it when we're in the subways. When I take my kids to school, people are dying. They're dying right in front of us, and nobody is helping. So I'm back in the race and back in the game and back on the West Side to do a couple of things. One, I have a vision of what this city could be. For me, it started in Washington Heights as a kid. My first campaign, some of you will remember, was for my cousin Bella Abzug. I never stopped believing that government could do big things. And I think we could do the big things again. I offer competence and vision and a 30-year record of doing some really important work as the assemblyman for the West Side for 13 years, as a Manhattan Borough president, as controller. And I think the difference for me is, can we bring someone in who could run this government once and for all and make a real difference for the kids that we don't know and will never meet, to the seniors who built these communities, and for all of you who are here tonight who want change, not just nationally, but locally. Because if we win it here, we will change the direction of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Tilson. I have a very simple message. If you love this city and are worried that it's headed in the wrong direction and want new leadership, I am the only change candidate in the Democratic primary. I'm the only one who's not a career politician and the only one who has a business background. I am a hardcore, lifelong Democrat. I grew up in Tanzania and Nicaragua, the child of teachers who met and married in the Peace Corps. I have been fighting against Trump and Trumpism since the day he came down that escalator 9.5 years ago. But I am very, very concerned that our party has lost its way here in this city in particular. I am a centrist, business-oriented person who has spent my career in the business world, looking at big broken companies and turning them around. And I can tell you the key to every successful turnaround I've ever seen is a change agent at the top who brings in a new team of people. And so I'm running as a Democrat who is fed up with my own party and how badly it is running this city. The voters know it. We saw it in the last 3 elections where Donald Trump, that guy, has gone from 17% to 23% to 30% of New York City voters voted for that guy. And I think we Democrats need to look in a mirror and say, if we want to stop him, we better start doing a better job managing the places that we control. Because I would love to blame the Republicans for the decline in this city, the 8% of our population that is left, the affordability crisis, the fact that the 7 major felonies in this city in the last 5 years are up 52%. We were one of the safest large cities in America, and we've gone backward in a sharp way. New Yorkers know it. They're voting with their feet. They're voting in the voting booth. And I'm going to them with a simple message. If you're happy with the way things are going, I'm not your guy. If you want change, I'm the only change candidate in the race. Thank you.
Good evening. It is great to be here. I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander. Thank you to Westside Dems, to Broadway Dems, to Columbia Dems, to Rabbi Matalon and B'nai Jeshurun. It's great to be on the West Side, which is part of the bedrock of the liberal democratic values that our country has thrived and depended on. But let's all be clear, those values are under attack right now from a president who is deporting our neighbors, who's pardoning insurrectionists, who is undermining the foundations of constitutional democracy. So we do need a mayor who will stand up for our values, and we don't have one. But an area where I actually agree with Whitney Tilson is we also need a mayor who can make sure we live up to our values, because we are not going to be able to defend this democracy if the mayors of our big blue cities can't keep people safe, can't make the housing affordable, can't confront the cost of living, can't run a government that's not corrupt, can't deliver on the outcomes and quality of life that matters to everybody in this room and every single New Yorker. So that everyone up here is going to talk to you about how we need a safer, more affordable, more livable, and better run city. What I think you want is somebody with a demonstrated track record of executive leadership making government work, with an impeccable track record of public integrity, and with big, bold ideas for how we make the city safer, more affordable, and better run. That's what I've been doing my whole career, 15 years before I was in politics, in affordable housing and community development, in the council, as the controller, pension fund at record levels, biggest investments in affordable housing, rejected the mayor's Medicare Advantage contract, rejected the mayor's Doc Go contract. All right. As mayor, I will end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. Have put out a ready on day one, 75-page plan to get it done. I will be so focused on preserving and creating affordable housing, which I have been doing my whole career. And I'll be focused on making city government work for you, so we both stand up and live up to those West Side values. Thank you very much.
Buenas noches, good evening. My name is Jessica Ramos. I am a state senator from Queens, and I am the proud mother of 2 middle school boys who are 11 and 13 years old. I am born, raised, and raising in my district, and I'm running to be your next mayor of the city of New York because I also want my city to be affordable, and for my kids and other New Yorkers like them to have a fighting chance to be able to keep making New York City their home. Everything from addressing our affordability crisis when it comes to housing, and making sure that we're prioritizing our mental health, and that includes everybody, but especially those struggling with severe mental illness, is something that I've been fighting for, along with free universal child care for parents to make sure there's a safe place for us to leave our children every day, and a youth jobs guarantee to help those who are young and trying to enter the job market be able to expand their horizons and find their potential, making SYEP, the Summer Youth Employment Program, year-round for those who are 16 to 24. There is a lot that we can do to make sure that young people still want to live in New York City. And it goes from the better delivery of everyday services, like picking up our garbage and making sure that our schools are properly run, and that we have a mayor that doesn't play games with our children's education money. That includes all the way from 3K to high school, where we should be making many more investments into vocational opportunities for our young people. I want us to dream of being able to build a New York City that works for everyone. And as a Labor Democrat, I believe that I can be that bridge to help unite our city and our 5 boroughs. I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Good evening, Upper West Side. Come on, this is a mayoral forum. Good evening, Upper West Side. That's what I'm talking about. Look, let's talk about what's happening today. We have child care centers that are being closed. Families that can't afford it. We have NYCHA tenants, just last week, thousands of them, without heat and hot water. Just last night, a 15-year-old was killed in East Flatbush. And what are the headlines coming out of City Hall today? The mayor trying to save his own skin. We are tired. We are tired of this failed leadership. We need solutions in this moment. Not people trying to save themselves, but people invested in saving this city. We are the capital of opportunity. It's why my parents came here close to 50 years ago, worked in factories, sent me to public school. I went to Brooklyn Tech for high school, Fordham for undergrad, Cornell for law school, worked at Davis Polk, became a state senator, all possible because of the greatness of this city. But that opportunity is slipping away for too many families in all 5 boroughs. So right now, we need a mayor that is going to lead us with solutions that match the scale of the problem. That's why I've proposed Rebuild NYC, a mandate to preserve 300,000 affordable units and create 700,000 more. It is why today I released a public safety plan that has a holistic approach to keeping every single New Yorker safe. We are not going to get different results using the same leaders of the past. I hope to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Michael Blake, and unlike Eric Adams, I'm actually here for you. You have mayors right now that are not actually fighting for you, they're fighting for a partner, and we are here to fight for the people. I come to you as someone who is a son of Jamaican immigrants, a former 3-time assembly member in the South Bronx, a former aide to President Obama in the White House, someone who has led 3 small businesses, including an effort right now around conscious capitalism to fight for our communities. We come here because we have an opportunity to do things different and better. Because we pay too much, we get back too little, and we deserve better than what you have right now. I do believe that we need to have universal child care in New York City to make it easier to make sure we're supporting our families to have a better chance. We do believe that there should be guaranteed income because we are paying too much in our communities right now, and it's too hard to pay our bills. We have to make sure we have middle-class housing to actually support those that are in our communities right now, and an expansion of the work I did as the chair of the Mitchell-Lama Subcommittee. It is the opportunity that we can end poverty and end homelessness at the same time, that we should not have communities that are wondering how they're going to make ends meet. We feel focused on cost of living, affordability, and public services, because our public safety and our public trains and our public housing and our public schools should all be better in our city right now. We are here because we deserve greater opportunities for our communities all at the same time. So if you are ready for change, if you're ready for something different, if you're ready for a better vision, if you're ready for the only person that has national, state, and city experience, my name is Michael Blake. I ask for your vote, and we ask to change the game in New York City at blakefornyc.com. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zohran Mamdani. I'm an assembly member representing parts of Astoria and Long Island City. About 3 months ago, Donald Trump was once again elected as the president of this country. And we saw that of every state in the nation, New York had the largest swing towards Trump, 11.5 points. And that swing took place in areas far from the caricature we had been told of Trump voters. I went to 2 of those neighborhoods, Hillside Avenue in Queens, Fordham Road in the Bronx. And I asked New Yorkers, who did you vote for and why? And I spoke to Democrat after Democrat after Democrat who told me either I didn't vote or I voted for Trump. And I asked them why. And they said because they remembered having more money in their pocket 4 years ago. They told me how they remembered groceries were cheaper, how they remembered rent was more affordable, how they remembered their Con Ed bill was lower, how they remembered that they could actually afford a Metro card. And all of this, they could not afford any of this while our government had money for so much else. And as insincere and ridiculous and horrific as we know Donald Trump to be, these were the words of New Yorkers who made that decision. And I asked them, what would it take for you to come back to the party that you're enrolled in? And they said a relentless focus on an economic agenda. And so I told them that I had just launched my candidacy to be the next mayor of this city on exactly that, a platform to make this city more affordable, to do so by freezing the rent for more than 2 million tenants in rent-stabilized housing, to do so by building on the success that I had seen firsthand with the Fix the MTA campaign we had launched and making every bus free across New York City, and to make childcare truly universal, whether your child is 6 weeks or 5 years. This is our platform, and this is how we're going to deliver a city that is more affordable than the one that New Yorkers are living in today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, we will start again with Scott on the far left side, and former controller, Mr. Stringer, excuse me.
Call me Scott.
We're going to be talking about housing to start off. It is pretty much the #1 hot topic. Some of you have already talked a lot about housing with, but hey, this is the thing. We want to talk about housing. So, Mr. Stringer, what is your one single top priority to help people afford apartments in New York City, and what will you do differently to make housing affordable? And sorry, 60 seconds for this round for everybody, 60 seconds.
So as many people in the audience know, I got my start in my 20s as a Mitchell-Lama housing activist. And one of the reasons I felt so passionately about this housing on the West Side was because it was integrated, it was affordable, and it was not just housing, it was also neighborhood. People who moved into these homes built schools, daycare centers. We should do Mitchell-Lama 2.0. And here's how we're going to do it. When I was controller, I audited twice the 1,000 vacant lands right in New York City. It's city-owned land. We own it. You own it. Rather than give it to big developers, give it back to the people. Give it back to the nonprofits. Give it back to the people who appreciate building affordable housing. We could build tens of thousands of units. It's not pie in the sky. The subsidy is available. So if you said to me today, what's day one look like? It looks like those vacant lots you see up and down Manhattan and throughout the city. We can do this by working with communities. You know, I'm getting tired of people telling communities what to do and what to think. Why don't we start by having a community conversation about what neighborhoods can be and the possibilities? We do not have to get overrun by overdevelopment, but we can create a city for the future that speaks to aspirational housing for the middle class, the working poor. I've done it by investing $1 billion in financing as controller to affordable housing. Sorry to go over, but this is a big topic.
I hear you. Mr. Tilson, same question for you, actually. What is your single top priority to help people afford apartments in New York City?
Fortunately, this is a city that a lot of people want to live in, and that's great. I seem to be one of the, I understand supply and demand, and we have a supply, all right, stand up. Oh, okay. Thank you. We have a supply and demand problem. We are not building, we have made it virtually impossible to build new housing in this city, and in many cases to maintain existing housing. So I think the city council passed was a step in the right direction, but because Mayor Adams, while he supported it, is so ineffective and under 5 indictments, what passed was at best 10% of what was necessary. If I'm elected, I will go in and fight for the other 90% to lift the onerous regulations and zoning, et cetera, that make it almost impossible to build new housing. In addition, we have 40,000 units right now, apartments, that are dilapidated and that we are not allowing the people who own them to raise rents at all because of rent stabilization, which is a good idea, but in this case it has gone too far, and no one is willing to put additional capital to renovate these apartments and bring them back on the market.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to continue now with different questions, but about housing. So the next question is for Controller Lander. This is an easy one, Controller Lander. How do you define affordable housing, and what criteria would you use to ensure it's accessible to the populations that need it the most?
All right. I mean, obviously, affordable to whom is a big question. I have been working on my whole career long, 30 years focused on affordable housing. Before I got into politics, 15 years running the Fifth Avenue Committee, chairing the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development. In the Comptroller's office, I made the biggest investment in preserving affordable housing in the city's history. 35,000 units of rent-stabilized housing put at risk when Signature Bank failed. We bought the mortgages, every one of them still rent-stabilized and affordable and earning great returns. You need affordable housing at a wide range of incomes. We need housing for homeless folks who are on the street. That's why I've proposed a housing-first model to end street homelessness for folks with serious mental illness who don't have anything that they can afford to pay. And then you need housing for working class and moderate income families, and we do need affordable home ownership opportunities for folks like city workers, which is why I've proposed a program with your Assembly member Michael Asher called Homes for City Workers that would match the mortgage that a teacher or a social worker or a nurse could pay. So if you could invest $350,000 in a home, but you can't find a home for $350,000, your pension fund will match it. And now you could buy a home for $700,000 because our teachers, nurses, and firefighters need affordable housing as well. Thank you.
State Senator Ramos, same question. How do you define affordable housing, and what's the criteria for it?
Well, as a rent-stabilized tenant, I definitely believe in making sure that we're protecting our existing housing stock. And I have to say that while I'm a big fan of the Mitchell-Lama model, we also should be looking at the precursor to it, which was the way our unions used to build housing in New York City. Here in Manhattan, there's a gem called Penn South, and it was not just about making sure that there were low-income rentals available. It was about modest equity homeownership opportunities for the workers of this city. We talk a lot about our renters, but boy, are we ready to be able to own a piece of our city too. And I believe we can leverage our union pension dollars with our taxpayer dollars to revive that way of building housing and making sure that we are taking everybody into account. Because we need to be able to recruit and retain teachers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, all sorts of professionals in order to address the problems that we're seeing in this city. So we want supportive housing for the lowest brackets, but we want to be able to have a holistic approach that doesn't just depend on big developers making bank, because trickle-down housing just doesn't work. Thank you.
Okay, State Senator Myrie, same question. How do you define affordable housing, and who should get it?
So I grew up in a rent-stabilized apartment. My mom still lives in a rent-stabilized apartment right now. And I ran for state senate because our rent laws were up for renewal in 2019. And thanks to many of the people in this room, we finally took back the majority to pass the strongest tenant protections that we've seen in half a century in this state. I think we have to ensure that we're protecting our rent-stabilized tenants. We have to expand our right to counsel. It is an excellent program to help people when they're in court, but it is not fully funded, so we have to fully fund it. I think we have to expand that to homeowners as well, who are facing foreclosure and deed theft. We also have to increase the supply in places that are already dense. I think it is important for places like Midtown that have that type of density to be a part of the solution, to bring down the rent for as many people as possible. I have a plan, Rebuild NYC, that is a mandate for 1 million homes, the preservation of 300,000, the creation of 700,000. That, to me, is the type of vision that we need at this moment, and I hope you'll check it out at delnorth.nyc.
Thank you. Just a note for everybody, we actually took a lot of trouble to give you some different questions. So I hope that everybody will answer the question we asked them and not the question they want to answer.
I'm sorry. And yes, we do have another question. So, for Mr. Blake, what role do you believe that New York's real estate industry plays in the current housing shortage, and how would you address the shortage?
They're doing everything possible to make sure that people actually can't get homes. That's what's fundamentally happening. And so if you actually want to change what's happening here, you have to do several things. First, we need local median income, not AMI, so it's actually targeted for our specific communities. We need to make it a change that we ban credit scores. It makes no sense that someone can have their credit score be determination on how you're getting a home. We should actually have incentives to make sure that when people are building units and building homes, that there is middle class and working class designated functions, as well as for our college students. College students right now are leaving because they don't feel like they actually have a place to stay. We need to stop giving tax incentives for someone to build so that you actually don't have a home, and actually have incentives so that we can keep a home, which is one of the reasons when I was in the Assembly and chaired the Mitchell-Lama subcommittee and worked with great allies such as Linda and so many people, we stopped the effort of people being jumped on Mitchell-Lama sublists because too often you were waiting for years to have a chance to get that. It has been wrong in what's happening for real estate and for developers. We need to change the dynamic so you have a better chance. If you go to blakefornyc.com, you'll see that vision we have for housing.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman, same question. What role do you believe that the real estate industry plays in the housing shortage, and how would you address it?
I think it plays a significant role in the housing shortage. You know, we saw an opportunity open up for New Yorkers to get assistance paying their rent, and more than 600,000 New Yorkers applied. The need across the city is immense. And right now, too often, much of our strategy to meet that need is to make it easier for developers to build. There's a role for them to play. But if we exclusively rely on them, we'll see the results of what we've seen in Soho, where we were told to expect about 1,000 units by now having been built because of a Soho rezoning, and we're only seeing about 300. I think we need to put the city's capital dollars to work. I think we need to take responsibility for building truly affordable, low-income housing across New York City so New Yorkers know that they can actually find an apartment at a more affordable price point than what they already see in the market rate.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now off to a lightning round in the interest of trying to get as many questions to you all as possible, because we have a group here that had a lot of questions, as you might imagine. So we're going to start with Mr. Tilson and go down in that cascading fashion, just having everybody respond. You've got 30 seconds. These are basically yes, no questions. There may be some surprise after the lightning round, so think carefully whether you want to say yes or no. Okay, first question. Do you support capping public school class sizes at 13 to 17 students?
No, it does more harm than good.
Okay.
I support the state law the legislature passed, which mandates class sizes, which Eric Adams has not put the funding in the budget to do, and I will.
Yes, we need to build more schools.
Yes, I support it.
No, we should keep it at 20 or below, and we have to make sure that more support is happening to our teachers and our educators at the same time, and make sure that our kids are not having to eat lunch early in the day because of overclass size as well.
Yes, I'm proud to have been a state legislator that was part of fighting for the class size reduction, and proud to stand here as a candidate that would overturn Eric Adams' approach to it.
I support the reduction based on the state law, but I also must say that the lack of implementation is not just because Eric Adams doesn't do it. The truth is he doesn't know how to do it, and this is where experience in government actually matters. It's easy to In conclusion, I support small class size. Look, this is the West Side. We don't do things with yes or no. It's hard.
But, you know, I'm the professor here, so you're going to have to pay attention. Okay. Next question. Beginning with Controller, that's right, Controller Lander. Should anyone without medical insurance be able to get an emergency room visit in the New York City hospital system and receive free treatment?
Yes.
I'm the co-prime sponsor of the New York Health Act in the New York State Senate, so yes.
Yes, and it's why it was so egregious that the mayor remained silent when the president proposed eliminating our Medicaid reimbursement system, which so many of our safety net hospitals rely on.
Yes, and that's why it's even more egregious that you had Medicaid freezes happen in the last 2 days, what's happening from Trump and what's going on. Everyone should be able to go and have their care at a hospital, period, point blank.
Yes, because if we're going to say that healthcare is a human right, then we actually have to take the steps towards that.
100% yes.
Absolutely yes, and I think it should be national as well. It's an embarrassment. We should all be embarrassed that we are the only developed country in the world that does not provide free universal care to all our citizens.
Okay. Thank you. Beginning with State Senator Ramos, do you believe we need more police officers patrolling on foot rather than primarily in patrol cars?
In that difference, yes. I believe that we need beat cops back on our streets.
Okay.
Yes, they should be patrolling on foot. They should also be in our subway cars. We should have a robust, well-managed, fully accountable police department.
Yes, because public safety is critical, but we also need to make sure that we have people that are actually trained to do mental health, to address the mental health concerns, because cops are not trained to that.
Yes, of those two options, and I do believe that it's time that we actually train individuals and task them with a primary responsibility of responding to mental health crises and homelessness, particularly within our public transit system, and transform what is currently a crisis of vacant commercial units across the system, and instead make those sites where we can actually provide services to the New Yorkers who are currently sleeping on those very platforms.
As mayor, I'm going to hire 3,000 more police officers. We're going to cut overtime from $1.3 billion to $650 million. We're going to take that money and drive it into an aligned policing and nursing and healthcare system, both in the subways and above ground. It is time to revolutionize how we look at crime. Enough being tough on crime or weak on crime. Why don't we just be smart on crime and bring us into a policing system of the 21st century? I have the plan, I have the belief in this, and we need more
Former
police.
Controller Stringer, I might have to, give you demerits here.
It wouldn't be the first time.
Yes, we need to get more police officers out in the
gonna
streets,
make
but
them
the bigger problem is that today we are at a 35-year low in the number of police officers. And then on top of that, when they do arrest people committing mayhem, we need to stop the revolving door where a lot of those folks are out the same day.
Yes, of course, we need more officers out on the street working with our neighbors, working with our community violence interrupters, working with our precinct community councils on real outcomes-driven safety plans. Yes, of course, we need a better managed police department. Can't have a police commissioner who's running a racket with his twin brother. But I will also say, if you want to end street homelessness, you have to connect people to housing, and no amount of policing will do that. That's why I've got a housing first plan called Safer for All.
So much. Okay, now we have, now I'm going to be rude to everybody because it's not fair for people to give longer answers. Everybody else is trying. You all have to try and say yes or no. So here's a very easy, straightforward one. Would you support raising bottle deposit refunds to 10 cents? Please begin. Yeah.
Yes.
Raising bottle deposits to 10 cents. It's a sustainability issue.
Absolutely, and should be actually higher.
Yes.
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 Absolutely.
Okay, now we'll go back to a more difficult question. What is the single most important action? Okay, this is not a yes-no question. It is a one-sentence question. Really, I'm going to get up from
With
my chair
parenthetical phrases
and
or not?
Stop anybody who goes beyond one sentence. What is the single most important action New York City can take to increase access to affordable housing for low-income New Yorkers? One sentence.
We must have a local median income as opposed to AMI, because AMI is not making it affordable for people to have a chance.
Thank you.
We must freeze the rent for more than 2 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized housing, considering the fact that the median household income of those units is $60,000. They have been subject to 9% rent increases under Eric Adams. The time for relief is now.
Man, that was like 5 sentences. 1,000 vacant lots, we can build low-income housing, and I like the fact that you said, Zoran, low-income housing.
Thank you.
Build a lot more supply by doing 10 times City of Yes.
For the lowest income New Yorkers, what's critical is to fix NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority. I've laid out a plan to do it. We must do it.
I agree with many. I'll add property tax reform as something that we need to do in New York City, and I will also say that we need to be able to keep people in their homes and raise the wage. Our wages have been stagnant for too long. Proud to be the senator that has raised the minimum wage and tied it to inflation. We got to go further.
Councilmember Brewer exposed that the shelter on 74th cost the city $80 million. We should stop building shelters and start building permanent housing.
Okay, straightforward question. Should landmarks and historic districts play a role in city development? Yes.
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 Of course.
Yes.
From our Jackson Heights Garden Apartments, absolutely yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, the final question in the lightning round, back to starting with controllers, former controller Stringer. Please stay on time. Name 2 things that you believe you have in common with the other candidates. 2 things in common.
I get to be first? Okay, really? Well, Brad Lander and I share a very special title, and that is controller. And I would say to my other friends, I can't single them all out, but I would just say that we love public service. We love public service.
I think everyone on this stage loves this city and believes it's being very badly led right now.
Neither Eric Adams nor Andrew Cuomo should be the next mayor of New York City.
I was going to say, we're all real Democrats and want Trump Democrats out of office once and for all. And clearly, we all care about affordability in this city.
Yeah, I think all of us love this city very much and are prepared to do everything possible to serve this city. And I think all of us live in this city, which has not always been the prerequisite. Thank you.
And none of us are trying to get a pardon.
God, those were all of my lines. None of us are running on a platform to cut library funding. And I think, Scott, you represented, which district did you represent? 67. 67. So I would say, like Scott, I also share roots on the Upper West Side. When I first came to this country, I was 7 years old. We moved just to Broadway Democrats. I went to middle school at Bank Street. I then went to Bronx Science, went to Broadway Democrats meetings at Bank Street, and it is truly lovely to be back here on the Upper West Side.
Thank you all. You really comported yourself pretty well under the circumstances.
Thank you. And we have another lightning round later, so, you know, I'm glad she took the hard stuff. These are longer questions, so back to 60 seconds each, and we are going to start with, actually, we're going to start with Mr. Tilson again for this round. If you are like me, Gail Brewer's annual census of empty storefronts is essential reading, one of my favorite pieces of the year. So we want to ask about empty storefronts, and what is your plan, Mr. Tilson again, for revitalizing commercial corridors and also just generally supporting small business? In 60 seconds, please.
Yeah, I've built 6 small businesses in this city in the 30 years I've been here, so I know what it's like. Almost every small business I talk to these days, let me give you some quotes. They treat us like we're the enemy. And these are good local businesses, and they're referring to the city agencies that they're dealing with. There is an environment in this city, in the business community, among small businesses and large, that this is a city that is hostile to business. And that's crazy, folks. If we're the party that's hostile to business, I'm in favor. I want this to be the best city in the world for small businesses, and it's sort of an attitude that starts at the top. So I am going to fight to bring jobs and create wealth, and that creates wage increases, and that starts to deal with the affordability crisis in this city.
Thank you. Comptroller Lander, same question. What will you do to revitalize commercial corridors and fill empty storefronts?
What a treasure our neighborhoods are that we get to walk to, our mom and pops, whether that's your dry cleaner or your local bodega, and we gotta keep it that way even as we grow the city. So I'd ask people to look at what I did in the Gowanus rezoning around the Gowanus Canal in my old council district, where we brought in 8,000 new units of housing, 3,000 of them affordable for low-income families, but there are artist studios. There are small businesses. There's a brand new grain mill and bakery opening because we built that into the zoning model, and we could do that as we see growth. Yes, we need more housing, but it's got to include spaces for small business. And second, for genuine mom and pops, genuinely small businesses, I support commercial rent stabilization so they don't get pushed out of our neighborhoods that they've done so much to create value for.
I have a different question for you, State Senator Ramos. We're trying to mix it up here now. What would be your contingency plan if New York City loses a significant amount of federal funding for critical programs? You don't have to do all of them, but we know that this could happen around housing, education, transportation, and infrastructure. So pick what you want from that
Well,
list.
we need to expand our MTA. We need serious resiliency projects to get us on track to meet all of our climate goals that we've set for ourselves and that we're way behind on. I want to be able to hire a chief revenue officer for the first time in the history of the state of New York, so that someone is tasked with actually finding how we can generate more revenue for the city. Remember, we can't levy our own taxes. We really depend on property tax, and this is why I believe in property tax reform as a means. But I also think there is untapped potential in helping our street vendors and making sure that they have a path to legalize their small businesses so they can pay sales tax revenue as well. I estimate that we would generate conservatively at least $500 million a year, but that's a drop in the bucket. So we're going to have to be very creative in the many different ways that we're going to have to raise revenue in the face of a fascist.
Thank you. State Senator Myrie, same question. What's your contingency plan in case of these losses, which look more and more likely?
Well, first we got to have a little fight in us. We can't have a mayor that is going to bend the knee every time Donald Trump tries to bully us and take our money. This isn't the federal government doing us a favor. It's our money. This is taxpayer money. So we deserve that back. We use every tool at our disposal, whether that is a legal case, whether that is working with our partners in the state to do it. I also think we have some opportunities. The Office of Management and Budget needs more auditors to go after taxes that are already owed to us by big corporations. This is not new taxes. These are taxes owed to us that simply deserve to be back in our general fund.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Mr. Blake, similar question. Whoa. Oh, we can't just skip over me. Oh. Yeah. Go ahead. Mr. Blake, similar question. We've got a lot of questions. Like I said, we're jumping all over the place. But, sorry, how will you stand up to the Trump agenda second term?
I love the energy right there. You have a 34-time convicted felon that we got to be actually fight against, and you have a mayor that won't do it at all because he's afraid about trying to stay out of jail. So first you got to call him what he is. He's a fascist. He doesn't care at all about New York, and he's not trying to help us in any regard. And so what do you have to do very specifically? I am the only person that has federal, state, and city experience. I worked in the White House. I know I'm supposed to be. I was in the assembly and worked on the local dynamic. Very concretely, to the previous question, we also have to be prepared. They're going to cut what's happening here. We have $3.2 billion that are in reserves, whether it be the general fund or the rainy day. We cannot allow what's happening in D.C. to hurt us. We actually need people that are going to step up and fight for us right now. And we do not have to raise taxes on New Yorkers to make sure we get ready for what's coming in D.C. Just because you have Trump, Cuomo, and Adams aligned as one does not mean at all that we can't fight for New Yorkers. That's what I would do when you allow me to be the mayor. We have someone in D.C. that does not give a damn about us. I'm fighting for you.
Thank you. Same one for the assembly member. How will you stand up to the Trump agenda in a second term?
In many ways, I am exactly what Donald Trump hates. A Muslim lefty from the other side of Queens. And I think what is critically important is that we stand up and fight this agenda. Too often, it seems like as Democrats, we are 24 to 48 hours behind whatever the Republican Party is doing. We need to understand that there is one thing that this president cares about the most, and that's ratings. And if we want to get to him to understanding that he has to back down from a number of these proposals, it is litigating that same battle in public. It is getting out there and saying, Donald Trump is trying to shut down your health care. Donald Trump is trying to shut down your access to food. Donald Trump is trying to take away your life. And I think what we've seen from Trump's first presidency is that Trump does not respect a leader that'll back down from a fight. Oftentimes, Trump is willing to let it go if you're actually willing to fight back. That's what we're going to do in New York City with myself as the mayor.
The final question here for long answer questions is for former Controller Stringer. We're moving to public safety in the subways. Subway safety remains a significant concern for New Yorkers. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that. What specific measures would you implement to improve public safety on the subways while tackling the interconnected problems that are reflected in subway crime?
I think the era of performative policing should end because the stakes are very high. I don't support doing surging police officers who sit on platforms all day long. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think a military presence in our subways is an answer. But felony assaults are up 20% since 2019, and we need to recognize that this police force is at the lowest level it has been in a very long time. I'm going to hire 3,000 more cops, but I'm also going to save that overtime money and align policing with some of the issues people face that are not just hanging out in the subway, but are living in the subway. People who are homeless, people who have mental health issues. This is where experience comes in, because we can rail about everything, but when it comes to actually getting something done, as unfortunately Eric couldn't accomplish, we have to bring a government together with real mental health expertise, honest policing. Think about this. We have a police commissioner who is rounding up criminals in the NYPD rather than focusing on crime in the subway. And we need a mayor who's honest with integrity and who has a serious public safety plan.
Thank you. We want to continue with public safety, and I want to ask Mr. Tilson a question about retail crime. What strategies would your administration implement to address the growing problem of retail crime in New York City, small businesses especially?
We have to address the fact that most of it is taking place and being committed by people who are repeat, not just once or twice, but 20 or 30 times. If you look at the statistics, a very small number of people are doing most of it. And this goes back, I think, I co-chaired Central Synagogue's Criminal Justice Forum initiative starting about 10 years ago. We fought for a lot of legislation that was necessary to address the inequities and often cruelty in our system. Unfortunately, what was meant to be legislation that I fought for meant to bring the pendulum to the center, instead got hijacked and went to the far left in a way that created a revolving door in our criminal justice system. 8 pieces of legislation, in fact, collectively, 6 at the state level, 2 at the city council level, have created a revolving door where there are basically no consequences for anyone who commits these lower level crimes, but you let it go on extensively like this and it wrecks quality of life for all of us.
Thank you. Controller Landry, we're going to continue with public safety as an issue here. What specific strategies would you implement to improve public safety on the streets?
Meaning specifically like traffic crashes or what?
No, public safety on the streets, crime.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just trying to be clear.
Good. Sorry.
Gotham has put out a fascinating article a couple of months ago showing that just 4% of the city's 120,000 blocks account for essentially all of the shootings. And Gothamist released that, not CompStat, because CompStat hasn't been updated in 20 years, even though now we're spending a lot of money on community-based violence interrupters, but we just do not have an outcomes-driven system. There isn't good management, or hasn't been good management. We've got a much better commissioner in now at One Police, in Jesse Tisch, but One Police Plaza, we need outcomes-driven management that modernizes CompStat, that integrates it with those community-based violence interrupters so that people on the streets can be focused on what's actually happening in their neighborhood, whether that's felony assaults, whether that's shootings, or whether that is traffic crashes like you have too many of on the Upper West Side, and focus policing resources there.
Thank you. So, Senator, I want to bring this to some very recent news, specifically the ICE raids that we've seen with lots of fanfare over the past couple days in New York City. What steps would you take to protect immigrant communities from harmful federal policies? And then also, specifically, How do you feel about those ICE raids? We've seen, the current mayor basically say, in this case, when they're going after violent criminals, I welcome it. How do you feel about it? Any 60 seconds.
Let me first share that I am the proud daughter of formerly undocumented immigrants from Colombia, and that I never forget where I come from. And I think that more than the fanfare we've seen about the raids, what I've seen in Queens is a whole lot of fear. There has been very little guidance and information shared by City Hall. Now that the laws have changed and ICE is now being allowed to conduct raids in houses of worship, just like this beautiful building, just like hospitals and schools, places that used to be safe havens for our children, for our elders, and everybody in between. I would want to make sure that people know their rights. That's first and foremost what's important for all of these institutions to know what to do in case ICE arrives, strengthen our sanctuary law where possible, and continue the cooperation with ICE within our sanctuary city law to work with them when there are people who have been convicted of crimes. It's important to protect people's due process, and there's still a lot more to do in order to keep our immigrant population safe here in New York.
Thank you very much. For Senator Myrie, same question. The response to the ICE raids, and how would you protect immigrant communities from the harms of federal policies?
I'm the son of 2 Costa Rican immigrants who came to this city. Let's be 100% clear. New York City would not exist if not for immigrants. Period. And our sanctuary city laws were started under Mayor Koch, continued under well-known progressive Rudolph Giuliani. This used to not be a political issue for New York City mayors, because we knew what the lifeblood of the city was. So I would uphold our sanctuary city laws. I would stand up to a bully president. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that without these protections, we are not required to work with ICE outside of our constitutional limits. There's something called the 10th Amendment for any of the lawyers in the room, where we can't not be commandeered by the federal government to cooperate with them outside of our sanctuary city laws. So I'm gonna uphold them, and I'm gonna protect our vulnerable communities.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Same question for you as well.
Son of Jamaican immigrants, my mama slept on church pews in Jamaica. It is absolutely racist, unconstitutional, and wrong, everything we're seeing out of Trump, especially when they talk about birthright citizenship. We are better as New Yorkers when we embrace our immigrants. And we have allowed absolutely racist, nonsensical language to come out of Donald Trump and what's happening here. And so when we think about for ICE raids, it's not just how inhumane they are. It has practical implications of what's going on in our communities. If a family is scared to go outside, whether it be a street vendor or taking your child to school, it impacts all of us in what is happening here. And so if we want to be serious on how to actually fight back a bully, if he wants to continue to send in raids and he continues to do things that are hurting us, then we should stop and cut off funding that's going to DC. We should actually get serious about what's happening here. If we want to be truly serious about this, it is wrong, it is reprehensible, it is unacceptable. We should make it clear we will not allow you to destroy our communities. We're actually going to fight for our people here in New York.
There you go. Assembly member, different question. And again, I know it seems like we're jumping all over the place, but I assure you, Mayor Adams, he gets questions from all over the place all the time. You got to be on your toes if you want to be mayor. So, we're right around the corner from the Westside campaign against hunger. Food insecurity is a huge issue in this city, and I'm wondering, in 60 seconds, are there any specific actions you plan to take to address that?
Absolutely. What we see across this city is that groceries are getting further and further out of reach for New Yorkers. We see that at varying income levels. And then there are New Yorkers who live in food deserts, who can't even find a grocery store. It's part of why my campaign has put forward the only plan in this race to make groceries more affordable. And we will do that through a city pilot program of opening one city-run grocery store in each borough. This is based, I should always wait for the claps. This is based on a feasibility study that was done in Chicago. This is based on the successes that we've seen of this very kind of approach in Republican states. And it's based on an understanding that food is essential. And what we have right now are corporate supermarket chains like Kroger's hiding behind inflation to jack up prices even more than is justified, while we as a city could take profit out of the equation, pass on the savings of rent and property taxes to customers so they can actually afford eggs, bread, milk, and the daily staples of their life.
Thank you. And Mr. Stringer, same question to you. What actions will you take to combat food insecurity?
Well, let me give you one example of what I did when I was Manhattan Borough President. I went into El Barrio in East Harlem because part of the struggle in the community was not just the lack of food, but the lack of healthy food. And we brought together community leaders and we said, how do we change this? Why are there no farmer markets? Why isn't there no fresh produce? Why do we have so many small stores that the prices get jacked up? That was a successful program because we linked not just funding, but community and community education. And I'm going to have a Go Green community in every single community board in New York City because it's the only way to address food inequality in this city. I will tell you that one of the most beautiful parts of being in government service was when we had our community members in El Barrio give recipes in their own culture, Mexican, Latino communities. And what we said was, we're going to transform those recipes into healthy eating. And you know what? We created the Go Green East Harlem Healthy Cookbook. Jeff, this was the #1 best-selling, okay, it wasn't, but it was great, and it was a love story to the community.
Who has sold more cookbooks, you or Eric Adams? I own them both, I'm going to be honest. I own both of them.
You own Go Green?
I have cooked from both of them. That's how obsessed I am with covering mayor's races.
I'm going to autograph it at the end of the night.
Thank you. With that, we will go into a lightning round once again. Afterwards, you can share your favorite recipes from your families, but we'll do the lightning rounds now. We'll start with Controller Lander, I think. We're going all over the place, but we'll start here. So, yes or no, should CUNY offer free tuition to all students?
Should it? Yes. It should.
Would you make it so?
I actually, right now the state controls CUNY and not the city. I would love to see municipal control of CUNY with the state continuing a maintenance of effort. But how about this? Let's start by making CUNY tuition free for anyone who wants to be a public school teacher in New York City so we could recruit and retain New York's brightest.
Thank you. Senator, yes, should CUNY offer free tuition, and would you push for that?
That's something that we've been pushing for in the state legislature, and I'm actually very proud to say that Governor Hochul in her State of the State precisely talked about free tuition in CUNY, in SUNY, for not just teachers, but a lot of the other essential services that we need. We really need to build a mental health workforce pipeline in New York City. We should all access mental health services in the languages that we speak.
Thank you. Senator Myrie, free CUNY?
Yes, we used to do big things in this city, like have free CUNY. We can do it again.
Mr. Blake?
Yes, and go a step further. Every student that graduates from a New York City high school should have access to go to CUNY automatically. We used to do that back in the day. And take it a step further, for our high school graduates, it should be mandatory that everyone has civics, financial literacy, and mental health before they graduate.
Thank you.
Yes, and I am proud to have been supporting a new deal for CUNY at the state level, which has been fighting for free tuition, as well as increased investments in CUNY, because what used to be the crown jewel of public education is crumbling, all while Columbia and NYU, two of the largest landlords in New York City, don't pay a dime in property taxes.
Mr. Stringer?
I support free CUNY. That's an applause line, but I will use my financial experience to figure out a way for the city to up its contribution so that we can ensure that our kids get the education they deserve. But in the meantime, I want to throw out one issue as well, which is a lot of our kids can't do the traditional CUNY entry, can't go to a 4-year college, even a 2-year college. A lot of single parents are working. They don't have the time taking care of their children. We have got to use our community colleges for certificate programs to get kids into
Thank you.
high-quality jobs, and it takes 6 months, and they're in the workforce.
Thank you.
Let's start doing things that actually accomplish stuff for our kids.
All right, Mr. Tilson.
Yeah, I've been on the board of KIPP charter schools for over 20 years. We send most of our graduates to CUNY schools, and it's even relatively low tuition, certainly to private schools, is a burden for them. So let's take that burden away and be like every other developed country in the world and provide free higher education.
Thank you. We'll start with Senator Ramos for this one. If you've been reading about city politics, you've seen a lot of advertisements about Airbnb. Would you allow Airbnb to operate more freely without regulation in the city?
No.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
I think that it's important particularly for smaller homeowners, to have the option. I think that there needs to be regulation, but I think that we can continue to look at options.
Thank you. Mr. Blake? Would you allow Airbnb to operate freely?
Well, no, not freely. We got to be, obviously we need much more regulation because what's happening is wrong. But we do have to be mindful that in some Caribbean communities, that is what's happening in terms of people getting extra income. So we have to regulate it much better because what's happening is not working, but we should not be hurting New Yorkers who actually want to utilize it to bring in extra means because people are struggling with cost of living.
So I guess broadly, do you support the city council bill?
Say again?
Do you support the city council bill about Airbnb? I guess that's really what I'm asking here.
No, because it didn't go far enough to actually make sure that we're protecting people.
Okay, thank you. Assemblyman? Yeah, well, look, do you support the bill that would allow more Airbnbs in single-family homes in New York City, to put it simply?
I do not support that bill. We are in a housing crisis. What we need to do is provide more housing units. That bill stands to take double digits of housing units off the market.
All right, thank you. Mr. Stringer?
You know, as controller, when I had the audacity to turn around and talk about that housing crisis and said that we should Airbnb launched $1 million attack ads on television against me. And we stood up to them and fought them and worked with labor. And I don't think we go back now with this legislation that is only going to exacerbate the housing crisis.
Mr. Tilson?
No, I don't think the solution is for Airbnb for short-term rentals from people outside the city, but I will say I will fight for a bill. There are 1 million empty bedrooms in New York City tonight. And I would fight for a bill that would allow people to do long-term rentals to fellow New Yorkers to generate some income for the people who own those apartments and provide affordable housing to people who need it.
Thank you.
No, I don't support the Airbnb rollback, but I actually last week laid out a solution just like this called HomeShare NYC, modeled on something called, you could take it up, there's a whole bunch of places that use the model of an online matching platform, but for tenants, not tourists, and actually help people. Like think about CUNY students who might be able to rent a unit from an empty nester.
Right. Thank you. There is a plan right now by the Adams administration to combine all of the police training facilities, starting with Senator Myrie, to combine all the police training facilities into one location. It's gotten some pushback. Some say it's a great idea. Some say it's a horrible idea. So, do you support what some are calling Cop City in Queens? Senator Myrie.
I do not support the current proposal.
Thank you. Assemblyman Blake.
Definitely don't support it. As we're seeing in Atlanta, what they try to do when people push back on it. And maybe if we help more kids to have something in their book bag rather than trying to arrest them for dime bags, we would actually have a better chance in our city right now.
Thank you.
No, I do not support it. It is a proposal for $225 million to be spent building a facility in Queens. We can put that money to better use.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer?
We've had a lot of issues, obviously, with police training, and I don't think we sort of combine training for different protocols, correction, and the like. I think we actually have to focus in on how we're going to not just recruit the next generation of police officers, but also what are they going to do? How are they going to get trained? And I don't think even the course today meets the needs, obviously, of 2021.
So yes to the new plan, or?
I would not support this plan, but I would support a new protocol for police training.
All right, Mr. Tilson.
I don't know about this enough specifically to comment, but I will follow the recommendation of the police commissioner I hire.
All right, Comptroller.
Have you seen the precinct houses recently? They communicate to officers a real profound lack of disrespect. Let's take this $225 million and use it to put air conditioning in the police dressing rooms and make that a place that officers would actually feel respected.
Thank you.
We'd have a lot better time holding them accountable then as well.
And Senator?
I don't support Cop City. I do support the return of crossfire training that Mayor Adams did away with so that our police officers are actually professional people.
All right, thank you. This one, we will start with Mr. Blake. The mask ban, that's another, there's a couple different proposals that are being considered in Albany and different ideas. So, as succinctly as possible, do you support banning masks at protests and, banning masks on the subway?
No, why would we ban it? First of all, it's absurd. We know we shouldn't ban masks because it's a health crisis. We have people wearing masks in the room right now, so it doesn't really make sense. I think fundamentally, people are thinking they're going to be afraid about what's happening. But let's be clear, we shouldn't be afraid of fellow New Yorkers, but we also shouldn't make sure we're hurting New Yorkers by creating a health crisis in that regard.
Thank you. Same question, yeah. Do you support any form of a protest mask ban?
No, I don't, and I actually support my colleague in the State Assembly, Harvey Epstein, co-wrote an op-ed with the head of the ACLU about how such a proposal is not going to keep New Yorkers safer, and it is also not practicable or enforceable, and will be a recipe for much of what we saw with stop and frisk.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer?
I think that the mask ban, I think there has to be, we have to come to terms with people who wear masks and spew hate speech. And they're cowards when they do that. And while I am sick and tired of watching these demonstrations which spews hatred. Having said that, as the person who organized the counter demonstration when the KKK came to town, because I recognized their right to protest, and we had a right to counter protest, I do think we have to have a meeting of the minds on these issues because it's gone too far.
So
it's
some
too
sort
dangerous.
of a ban, but...
Perhaps.
Okay. Mr. Tilson?
I deeply support the right to protest, but you can't do so anonymously, especially as Scott pointed out, if you're behaving in a way that is particularly frightening to our Jewish population and Jewish students on campuses. I have one who's in college right now, and it is, she feels unsafe, and that is not right.
Thank you.
So I don't support a mask ban for protests. You do have the right to protest anonymously, but you don't have the right to commit crimes anonymously. So I think it's reasonable that if you wear a mask while you're committing a crime, that could be an added penalty. But that's about someone who's committing a crime, not somebody who's out there protesting. We obviously have a lot of work to do on anti-Semitism, on Islamophobia, on hate in this city, and the next mayor needs to focus a lot more on it.
We also need to do a lot of work on doxing. That is the reason why students are starting to use more masks when they protest, and they deserve to be protected. No mask ban.
Senator?
I was pepper sprayed while protesting as a senator. And so I don't just say this with rhetoric. I have put my actions behind those words and believing in our First Amendment. But if you are committing a crime and you are wearing a mask, there should be consequences for that.
All right, and we will close with a, hopefully it's a fun one. I don't know, this one kind of shook up Andrew Yang in 2021, so we'll see. But do you take the subway regularly, like more than once a week? And then also, what's your favorite subway station? And I believe we're starting with Assemblyman Mamdani for this one.
Yes, I take the subway everywhere. I was trying to take the 7 to the 1, and then there was a 15-minute delay, and so then I switched to the E, and then that was stalled at 50th, and then I ran to 59th Street, and I took the 1 to 86th Street.
And do you have a favorite station?
Now, my favorite station is actually Herald Square, and I say that because there is an interactive musical installation between the uptown and downtown NQRWs, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it makes me happy.
All right, thank you. Mr. Stringer, do you ride the subway?
Most mornings, I take Max and Miles, my 2 kids, on the subway on the way to school. Always say hello to the military personnel who greets me, and I'm saying you guys got to go do something else. But my favorite subway station is the entrance is the one I built. Everyone know the 72nd Street subway station? Come on, give it up. Yeah. You know the 2 entrances? I built one of them. I got the money and the demonstration. I was so proud of it as an assemblyman, I go out in the morning to tell everybody going in the subway that I did this. Woman comes up to me and says, "This is amazing, Assemblyman." And I'm like, "Yes, it is."
Thank you very much.
Hold on, you got to hear the punchline. She's a West Sider. She comes back to me and says, "It's leaking."
Yeah, when I'm not riding my bike, I'm always on the subway very regularly. My favorite station is the 96, the new Q line. But every time I'm in there, I'm thinking, why can't we have beautiful subway stations everywhere? And 2, why did it cost 6 times the cost per mile to build this subway line than any other city has ever spent? It really underscores the failures of our party at the state and city level.
That one is beautiful.
Yes, a regular subway rider, the elevator at the 7th Avenue F stop. I took 10 years fighting to get. It was preposterous, but it is finally there. But the best station is the Smith 9th.
Did you build it?
I did not build it. But we used participatory budgeting to get the funding to build it. The Smith 9th Street FG station. And I know we're on the Upper West Side, but when you come out to Brooklyn, it's got a view of the Statue of Liberty. It used to be how you looked out and saw the Kentile floor sign. It's the highest, and it has the best view of this gorgeous city, and it's a beautiful place to be.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't have a driver's license, so I take the subway every day. I took the E to the D to the 1 to get here today from Jackson Heights, from my favorite train station, the 74th Street station in Jackson Heights. It is where people from all over the world, because we are the most diverse district in the entire world, meet the tourists who come off the Q70 from LaGuardia Airport, and I'm hoping to get the money to rebuild the station in the state budget this year.
Thank you. Senator?
I take the subway every single day. I do not own a car. I do not drive. I grew up taking the Q train. Before it was the Q, it was the D that was on that line, going over the Manhattan Bridge where you could see the Brooklyn Bridge on my way to Brooklyn Tech. But I want to talk about my favorite experience, no matter what line it is, when you're sitting in a subway car and you can hear 3 languages being spoken at the same time. There is no other place on the planet where that happens. And that's exactly what makes our city so great.
Thank you, but not one station?
So I'm a big Liberty fan. I love Atlantic Ave because when you're coming up those escalators and you can see the pictures, you can see the action, you can hear the crowd, there's nothing like it.
Thank you. And Assemblyman.
I don't have a car. I'm from the Bronx. I'm on a train all the time. I'm a 2-5 train guide regularly, 3rd Avenue, 149th Street. I was just there earlier today because I was working with local bid leaders because we're trying to address the mental health crisis, which is one of the reasons we have to get funding from our opioid settlement funds to actually help what's going on right now and make sure we have mental health support as well as going on to that degree.
Thank you very much.
But just to the piece on the subways.
You've gone beyond the bounds of the subways.
Well, you let people go in a minute. We watched that right there. We also have to make sure that we're being clear and making sure that we're safe in our communities, because a previous answer said that we should criminalize people wearing masks, which would be very concerning for Black and brown communities who take the subways.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving away from the lightning round, and we're moving back into long answers, which aren't that long in terms of what you get, so apologies. We're going to begin with former Controller Stringer in the education realm. What specific steps will you take to expand access to affordable child care for working families?
Well, when I had, with my wife Elise, who's here tonight, when we had our first, you can give her up for our next First Lady of New York. When we had our child, and we were both W-2 employees, we couldn't believe how much we were paying for childcare. When we had our second kid, it was even getting worse. And I worked as controller on a plan called NYC Under 3 to start thinking about ways that we can have affordable childcare. Worked with Jessica Ramos on a lot of this, and we did it together. And I believe now we offered a plan called Tri-Share Childcare, which would allow people of very modest means to have free childcare and have a scale for people who could afford a little more, and take down this $20,000 a year childcare budget for most families and reduce it. And I want the business community to opt in on this, because part of what they have to recognize is if they want to retain their workforce, they have to start addressing the issues that workers think about, especially young people and young families. Childcare is the reason people leave. Lack of pre-K is the reason why families can't afford to stay here. We talked a lot about affordable housing.
Thank you, former controller. Sorry.
Of course.
Mr. Tilson, will you please address the same question? What specific steps will you take to expand affordable child care for working families?
Yeah, my team and I are going to come in and take a very hard look at the $114.5 billion city budget. That's double that of any other city in the world. We are spending more and getting less than basically anybody. And I'm going to tell them, first, serve the people in New York better, but secondly, find me the fat. There's at least $10 billion of fat in there. Nobody knows where it is, but my team and I are going to find it. One of my highest priorities to reallocate that money into serving New Yorkers is going to be providing childcare, low-cost childcare anyway, on a means-tested basis to the families that need it.
Thank you. Controller Lander, also in the education realm, what are your key funding and policy priorities for the New York City public school systems, especially in face of the loss of or expiration of the COVID-19 funds?
Absolutely. This is so critical. Our public schools are where we spend the biggest chunk of city money and the most important thing we do to raise up our young people. But, you know, we call it New York's finest and New York's bravest and New York's strongest because we know it's not the fire engines or the sanitation trucks that keep our neighborhoods safe or pick up the garbage. And yet we talk like the schools educate the kids rather than the teachers. So I've got a plan called New York's Brightest that's all about investing in our teachers. The pandemic was a gut punch to the relationship. So that's about recruiting teachers. That's why I want that plan to make CUNY tuition free. That's about retaining them. That's why I want homes for city workers so they could actually afford to buy here. And that's why I'll make sure they have time to see every kid, to support them, and to provide them the resources, the training, the support, and the respect that they need. It's teacher training, recruitment, retention that will help us make sure every one of our kids gets the public education they deserve.
Thank you. State Senator Ramos, same question. What are your key funding and policy priorities for the public schools?
Well, we already know that Title I funding may be jeopardized by this new presidential administration. And that puts a lot of our most vulnerable students in a very precarious position. So we are going to have to step up to Trump and fight for education funding to save our public education here in New York and arguably across our country. This is the only means our children have to enter and stay in the middle class. So I want to be able to have our funding for our city schools be sacred. Most of our money comes from Albany. A lot of what we've done is make sure that we're sending back every nickel and dime that has traditionally been owed to our students. We have to continue to work with the governor in order to make sure that we have the funding in place to be able to deliver on universal child care all the way through CUNY, hopefully, so that we are prioritizing our education.
All right, thank you. This question for Senator Myrie, and for anybody who was watching the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hearing today, I wanted to ask, as mayor, would you take steps to keep COVID and flu vaccines accessible in New York City? Do you see a role for the city in doing that?
100%. And what is particularly dangerous about this administration is that funding, what we get from the CDC, the studies, the research, but also the hard funds, it's in jeopardy, depending on who's going to be leading our health department on the federal level. I have fought very hard to protect our safety net hospitals, our places where we saw some of the highest incidents of COVID-19 deaths. SUNY Downstate, the only state hospital in the entire city of New York, threatened to be closed by this governor. We stood up, we fought, and we kept it open. That's the type of leadership that we need for healthcare provision, and that includes ensuring that we have enough on vaccines. The hard truth is, unfortunately, we are one day away from the next pandemic, and we have to be prepared in order to meet that challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, same question. Yeah, does the city have a role in vaccination, effectively?
Absolutely. We have to make sure people are safe and that we are alive. And we have to be clear about this, that there is a continual healthcare crisis because it's been long-term in terms of COVID, and we know other pandemics can occur. It's one of the reasons why I co-led the effort on diversity and medical scholarships when I was in the assembly. But go a step further. Again, as we think about people that are right now that are wearing masks in this room because we want to make sure that you're safe because of the respiratory issues that are happening, it's the dynamic of what we did during COVID. During COVID, we led the effort with World Central Kitchen to go out into the communities and provide food throughout the city, wearing masks to provide that because of the pandemic. People were wondering if they could be safe and if they could keep their home. We are concerned right now, as we should be, by the federal dynamic. And it's not just about what he's doing around making sure the COVID vaccines they're going to push back on. You have someone that literally does not care about us staying alive. Trump made that clear the last time, and they're showing it again right now. And so it goes back to the dynamics, from fighting for you for Medicaid and Medicare to actually understanding the dynamics on the state and the city and the federal. You need a mayor who can understand both. And maybe if we actually help people to feel better, Eric Adams would be here because he's been sick all week. Yeah.
Thank you. Assemblyman, similar question, just with the White House and threatening potentially the Affordable Care Act and also just our current healthcare system, what would you do to protect the city from potential cuts to federal Medicare funding and the like?
I think the first is to do that which is within our control. What we've seen Eric Adams do instead is fight doctors who are asking for the bare minimum for the work that they're doing across many public hospitals across the 5 boroughs. We need to have a mayor who not only follows the science, but rewards the people who are actually doing that work on the front lines of it. Additionally, under de Blasio, there was something called the Tenant Support Unit. This was an office that proactively went out and informed tenants of their rights. We need to have something similar to that when it comes to healthcare. We need to be telling New Yorkers that under Joe Biden's presidency, there was a program where New Yorkers could be ordering free COVID tests. I do not recall this mayor doing that much education on that matter, and many New Yorkers being forced to go to Duane Reade and spend $25 on those same tests. I also believe that it is critically important, as my colleague and someone who shares the same initials as I, ZM Zelnormiri, is for us to put an end to hospital closures, because that is the bare minimum that New Yorkers deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start our final round now and ask a question, beginning with Scott Stringer. One of the important issues on the West Side is really preserving historical buildings. The city's announced that they might begin to subsidize the demolition of older buildings rather than reusing and repurposing them. What steps would your administration take to preserve historic structures such as the West Park Presbyterian Church that serve the local arts community? See, there was a reason we asked that question.
Gail should answer it, but I'll do it for her. Look, I do respect and love the architectural beauty of the West Side and of our communities, whether it's uptown where I grew up or down here. And I think we do have to treasure those buildings and those sites. I think that the Landmarks Commission has basically been defunded. We don't have discussions about what we should preserve. And in building the next generation of affordable housing, we don't have to make those choices. We can preserve what we have, respect our history, and we also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this debate, we do have our vacant lots. We do have the ability to build housing and protect what's ours.
Thank you. Mr. Tilson, one of the concerns on the Upper West Side is the issue of rising anti-Semitism in New York. What are your plans to combat the rise of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic hate crimes in particular in New York, and hate crimes in general as they've been rising for every religious group in New York City?
Yeah, this is something very personal to me. My wife and 3 daughters are Jewish. I've been a member of Central Synagogue for 20 plus years. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a daughter in college where the Students for Justice for Palestine is out there spewing virulently anti-Semitic messaging, emails to the entire campus. So there's a balance that has to be struck here, of course, between the right to free speech and protest, but I think that balance has been a bit skewed and has created, there have been protests that have gone far beyond protests, well into hate speech and calls for genocide that have resulted in violence, attacks against Jewish students, and creating an unsafe environment on campuses, but also elsewhere in the city. And I think we have to take a much tougher line against that kind of behavior while respecting the right to protest.
Thank you very much. Controller Lander.
All right.
There's just, well, I have a lot of questions about how to respond to Trump, but this is one of them. So the Trump administration has a different view on civil liberties and constitutional rights than you do, and I believe than everyone on the stage, including people of color, Muslims, and members of the LGBTQ community, particularly trans women. And I'm wondering, what steps will you take to protect New Yorkers? How will you protect especially the civil rights and liberties?
Hear, hear. So we mobilized right away after the election. We actually put out 2 reports on protecting New York City, looking at the budget, looking at civil liberties questions. I convened a roundtable of business leaders, labor leaders, civil rights leaders. We're reconvening business leaders on immigrant protection because that is a place where New York must live up to having the statue in our harbor. We're actually convening a roundtable of trans and LGBTQ leaders to talk about how the city can have their backs. Look, what we have to do in New York City right now is basically the opposite of what Donald Trump is doing to the federal government. We've got to double down on civil liberties protections. And you know what? When we do that, we will benefit because more people will want to be living in this city when they feel safe. So it's not only what's right and just, it is the best way to keep this city thriving into the future. And as mayor, you can count on me to do it every day.
Thank you very much. Actually, back to Columbia University, and we saw the mayor and the city's response to the protests, specifically talking about the time where there was like the late night raid. And I'm curious about how you will ensure, I guess basically, what's your position on that? How would you have responded to that situation of students in Heinz Hall?
I was deeply disappointed to see police officers with heavy artillery, and now that we've learned about text messages that they were sending each other, saying that they would be targeting and encouraging each other to physically hurt students on campus. Look, I think it's right to protect our children, our college students' right to protest, and certainly college campuses are a place for the exercising of critical thinking. That's what we want to see, just not in a way that makes it an unsafe learning environment for any group of people. But we do know that anti-Semitism is particularly on the rise and has skyrocketed in comparison to all of the other categories of hate crimes that we've seen. So I would want to first and foremost make sure that we are talking to campus safety and see what role they are playing in actually doing their jobs before we actually think about sending police officers on campus, and definitely not SRG or the units that are much more heavily armed with guns that belong nowhere near our students.
Thank you.
State Senator Myrie. We're going to move on to the question of mental health and homelessness. How will you address the mental health crisis, particularly among those sleeping on trains and platforms?
Thank you for the question. We released a plan today that addresses this specifically, called Safe Streets, Safe Subways. It requires...
We didn't see your plan, by the way. This was just...
It's okay. It's okay. You can take a look. It's 41 pages. So we have to recognize that things feel different on our subways and on our streets. And I say that as someone that has been taking public transit my entire life. I went to take my wife out for her birthday to go see The Lion King last weekend. And we got on the train and had to move subway cars 3 times because there were New Yorkers that were behaving erratically. Our plan would be to address this by sending out a trio of teams, ramping that up, that includes law enforcement and medical professionals that can provide the help that these New Yorkers who are suffering need. And not just to send them to Rikers or to send them to an ER room where they're going to get right back on the streets and on the subways, but in a stabilization center where they can actually get the help they need and move them into permanent housing.
Thank you. Reverend Blake, we have a lot of seniors on the Upper West Side, and this question was addressed by many of the people who are living on the Upper West Side now. They want to know, what will the next mayor do to address the housing challenges that many seniors are experiencing now, being thrown out of their homes or being unable to take care of themselves?
We have to honor our seniors and protect them. You've done the work, and too often you're actually not being protected in that manner. That's the reason, first and foremost, we need to expand out on Mitchell-Lama protections, not just for someone to be able to have a home, but to keep a home. Because too often what's happening is that seniors are being pushed out because you have landlords and developers that are actually not trying to help you at all. They are looking to have someone get confused and do something that's wrong, that's being pushed out, and it's absolutely unacceptable. Second to that, we actually have to make sure we're making it easier for a broader cost of living dynamic for our seniors. And protecting of pensions and protecting of all other expenses help them as well. It's a collective cost of living opportunity that has to happen for our seniors to give you the dignity that you deserve. You have worked too hard to be wondering if you can keep your home. We are actually not putting in place to give you that protection right now. And if we did both of those things, then we would give the dignity and honor to seniors, not just in the Upper West Side, but all across New York City.
Representative Mamdani, we want to move for our last question of this round to a climate crisis question. New York is right in the line of fire when it comes to flooding and climate change. We haven't really yet developed a sufficient response. I won't ask you in 1 minute to give us that entire response, but if you could focus on for a moment NYCHA. What can we do to secure NYCHA housing from extreme weather events?
This is something that is close to home for me, as I represent Queensbridge Houses, the largest public housing development in all of North America. And what we've seen is decades of disinvestment comes to bear in these moments of extreme weather events, all brought to a new level by a sewage system that was built more than a century ago for levels of rainfall that are nothing close to what we have to go through today. I think truly what we have to do for NYCHA, both in response to extreme weather events and the climate crisis, but also in the sense of separate from that, is to stop pretending that Washington is going to come and give us the funding to actually repair the housing for the most working class of New Yorkers. New York City and New York State need to step up and take a larger responsibility to actually funding NYCHA. And we used to do that as a city, especially when we understood that this was more of our responsibility until Michael Bloomberg started to step away from that. It's time for our city to step up and challenge the state to meet us in that same commitment.
Okay, now it is on to our closing statements. We are going to actually go backwards this time, so we will start again with Assemblymember Mamdani. And instead of, well, our specific question is, what is it? Hey, why should we vote for you to be our mayor? Give us the elevator pitch. Why should we vote for you And I know we have a hard out at 9 p.m., so still 1 minute elevator pitch, please.
You should vote for me to be the next mayor of this city because I am going to do everything in my power to make this city more affordable. You've heard me speak a lot about rent freezes. You've heard me talk about the necessity of universal child care. But I want to talk for a moment about free buses and what it will do to transform this city. More than 1 million New Yorkers today ride the slowest buses in the nation. I launched a campaign called Fix the MTA. I don't need to tell you why we called it that, where we won a free bus pilot, making one bus route free in each borough of New York City. And we saw that by doing so, we increased ridership by more than 30%, decreased assaults on bus operators by 38.9%, and brought in a majority of new riders making $28,000 or less, 11% of whom had previously been taking a car or a taxi, taking people out of private automobiles, putting them on public transit. Now, when you stand up and say you have a vision for working class New Yorkers and affordable New York City, people say it's not realistic. It is very realistic. If we simply match the corporate tax rate of New Jersey, we would be able to pay for this entire agenda. I'm not going to stand here and promise you to make prices lower at Harry's Shoes, because I can't do that. But what I can promise you is fighting every single day to make these city more affordable and do so in these 3 explicit ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, why should we vote for you?
As we have watched in the last 9 days, you need a mayor that's going to fight for New York City while also fighting about what's going on in D.C. You need someone who actually is prepared to do that immediately, and we'll give very concrete ways on how we can help you right now. We need to have universal child care across New York City. We need for nonprofits to be reimbursed faster because you're doing the work and you're being asked to wait too long. We need to have civics for all of our kids so they can actually reimagine. We used to have Schoolhouse Rock back in the day. Let's actually have civics in our communities right now. We need to have guaranteed income so we can actually help people pay their bills and realize their dreams. We need to have middle class and affordable housing that's dedicated because you have done the work and we have to fight for you. If you recognize that we pay too much and we get back too little and we deserve better, my name is Michael Blake. I am asking for your vote to be the next mayor of New York City. Follow us at blakefornyc.com. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Senator Myrie, why should we vote for you?
I would not be standing here today if not for my middle school teacher, Mr. Habib, who scrapped the curriculum in the 8th grade and said, I'm going to prepare you to take the specialized high school exam. We got into Brooklyn Tech. It changed the course of my life. I took the train in one direction and had my entire success before me. And if I went to a different school in the other direction, my life would have been very different. We deserve a city where no matter what train you take, no matter what zip code you live in, no matter what language you speak, no matter how old you are, that you will have opportunity to be great. We need a mayor that cares about New Yorkers and not himself. And we cannot look to the past if we want a better future. I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ramos.
Well, I'm ready to fight like a mother for my city. I love New York City. I want to be able to grow old in New York City. I want my children to have a fighting chance to be lifelong New Yorkers just like me. And we need real change in leadership. Now, I look a little different from my colleagues up here. I would be the first woman mayor, but I'm also the only candidate that's actually already worked at City Hall. I've been proud to carry 20 years of public service. I started out as a council staffer during the Bloomberg administration. I was a member of the de Blasio administration who helped deliver on universal pre-K. I've been seeing Adams at City Hall as a state senator, and these past 6 years I've wasted no time in fighting for the affordability of our city. I have a strong record in raising the minimum wage and tying it to inflation, in increasing child care eligibility from 275 to 400% of the federal poverty line, and I want to bring that record and that experience to have a City Hall that actually works for New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Comptroller Lander.
Thank you all for being here. I wake up every day thinking about how we can solve the problems New Yorkers are facing with the resources we have. So New York City's pension funds under my watch have now reached their highest level ever. We have the most ambitious decarbonization plan of any pension fund in the country. We had the backs of Starbucks and Amazon workers. We've made the biggest investments ever in affordable housing, $2 billion in social bonds. Our audits have saved hundreds of millions of dollars and held Eric Adams accountable time and time again. If you could look at only one plan of mine, I didn't get the question on homelessness and mental health. My plan, Safer for All, will end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness in New York City. It began with audits of the homeless sweeps, failing. Went on and looked at audits of the intensive mobile treatment program, failing, and then found the solution, Housing First, that in an integrated model can actually connect people to housing and care and end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness in New York City. If you want the best problem solver in the race, I would love your vote.
Thank you. I told you all that we spend $115 billion a year, double that of any other city in the world. Raise your hand if you think city government is providing you with super high quality services for the super high taxes we're all paying. Yeah, me neither. For what we're paying, we should be living in paradise, and we're not. The city government, by and large, is delivering mediocrity at best and outright failure in too many places. So, if you want someone to manage the city better, who can be a true change agent, I'm the only person in the race who is not a career politician and who will shake up the status quo. When I'm elected, I won't owe anything to anyone and will be fighting solely for the people of New York City. So I pledge to end street homelessness, cut crime in half, double the rate of construction of affordable housing, and make this city the best city in the world for small businesses. So please join me in the fight for prosperity, affordability, and safety for every New Yorker, because we deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Stringer.
Well, I'm a career government elected official, and I'm proud of it, because right now this city is under tremendous, tremendous crisis. If you want somebody who is going to have a real track record in fixing things, someone who's a proven reformer, you get the best doctor that you can find. You don't hire a plastic surgeon. You hire somebody with experience. In every office I've had, I've made a big difference and changed that office. In the Assembly, I ended empty seat voting and took on the establishment. As controller, I basically built, with many of you in this room, community-based planning and community board reform that changed the direction of this wonderful community and Manhattan. And as controller, I did the big national things. Not to diminish Brad in any way, he's my successor, but I divested $4 billion from fossil fuel when everyone said it couldn't be done. I was the one who divested from guns when they said that couldn't be done. I was the one who said, let's end investment in private prisons and make sure we send a loud message. I did that work. And right now, the best thing that Andrew Cuomo can say is that that $5 million book deal sold no copies. But what he did was turn around and hurt thousands of our grandparents. I'm going to change the discourse and the conversation by doing the real work, because I'm the only one who has the government track record that will make a difference. Consider that.
Okay, well, this is it, everyone. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This was extraordinary. We have an extraordinary group of candidates to choose from here in the Democratic primary. Everybody, go out and tell your neighbors what they missed tonight and tell them about all these amazing candidates. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody tried so hard.